Hey everyone, the Future here, and today we're going to take a look at RC-20 by XLN Audio. Now, I had initially planned to do this video right around the time I looked at the Unfiltered Audio Lo-Fi AF plugin, but for some reason I got completely distracted, wasted my trial, and when I came around to do it, I didn't have a trial anymore. And the ID kind of faded away. But recently there was a sale on the plugin boutique, and a pretty good chance if you find this video you picked up RC-20 on the plugin boutique as well. Sadly this sale has ended already, so I don't think you can still pick it up at that low price. And I had hoped to make this video before the sale ended, but there were some little issues with the key delivery from the plugin boutique website, which really honestly hasn't happened to me before. So that was a little bit frustrating. But here we are. We have RC-20 and we can take a look at it. Now in this video I won't compare it to Unfiltered Audio Lo-Fi, so if that's the video you're waiting for, you're going to have to wait a little bit longer, because I want to do that video, but these plugins aren't one-on-one the same, so it will take a little while to find a good way to show you the differences and the similarities. So what is RC-20 about? It's about retro coloring, of course, so it's about imperfections you can add to your also perfect digital media. That's pretty fun. And for the main demo I want to use Addictive Drums, also by XLN Audio, because seemed kind of fair to use two excellent products in one video, right? Totally not sponsored, sadly. I just like these products and I wanted to show them. And I want to show you the possibilities, so you can make up your mind if this is a product you want or need. So let's get into it. So the beat I'm going to use is this. Pretty nice little drum beat. And let's switch on RC. It's already got some stuff dialed in, so I want to demo this first. Let's take a listen. So this is a pretty extreme effect. You can make it even more extreme. For that nice little very broken radio kind of effect. So let's go left to right through this plugin. The nice thing is if you put the dials at 0, it will be bypassed, so we can just move straight through. At the top you have a magnitude, which is a master mix, which is pretty nice. As you can see, if you lower it, it will also lower the other parameters in the plugin. So it's a very nice effect. It's very good for doing kind of fade-in effects or fade-out effects. Left to right, let's start with noise. Right, I need to turn off the EQ. There we go. So what noise does, it adds noise. You have a couple of different types of noise, going from vinyl, stompbox noise, cassette noise, studio noise, and the Apollo lunar lander, apparently. Let's go with something easy like vinyl, and you can set it to either follow your sound levels or not. For demonstration's sake, let's just turn it on. We can actually turn off the drum kit as well, so you can just hear the noise. Now you can make it either darker sounding or higher sounding. Little UI pet peeve is that you can't double click to center or to summon a text input box. That's a bit of a shame. Nothing breaking, but it's a bit of a shame. You can either have this effect before the other effects or after, depending if you want the noise to be affected by the other modules. Aside from following, You can also set a ducker, internal ducker, to make the noise less obvious when there's a loud sound source. So that gives you a bit of control over when the noise is audible and when it's not audible. It's very cool to have a little bit of control over that, because just having static noise going in the background can be a bit frustrating or unpleasant, at least. Underneath you have a flux control, which adds other randomness to the sound. So it's a bit loud. And let's go through a few noise modes. As you can hear, they have a fade out when you stop the transport, which is pretty neat. That's your noise section. You can also turn them on and off with this little dial, or you can just zero them out to bypass. So let's get into Wobble, which emulates whoa and flutter, like you have it on a cassette deck. Fun thing here is you can set the rate for the whoa and flutter independently. You can fade between them. You also have a stereo to have different whoa and flutter between the two channels. Especially at these extreme settings, it sounds pretty wacky. That's the best way to demonstrate it. Normally you would have these values pretty low because real decks don't have that much whoa and flutter. Next to that we get the distortion. We get a few different types of distortion, which is pretty nice. And aside from that, you can also control the frequency range in which the distortion affects the signal. So it can be nice to just crush like the bass drum if it's somewhere here. Or maybe you just want to crush the highs a little bit with a little bit of distortion. One thing that might be a bit of a shame is that you can't audition which part of the signal you're affecting. That might have been nice if you want to find, for instance, the snare. It would be a little bit nicer to have the control to just solo this out. But there's other tools where you can find the frequency where your snare is in, so you can always find a way around that. Master mix control. The flux again adds some weird randomness stuff to it. And your distortion amount, which goes all the way to 11, thankfully. All the other controls go to 100, and obviously distortion goes to 11. Next to distortion we get digital, which is about bitrate and bit depth reduction. So we have rates. And we have depth on the other side. Again, we get the same level of control over the frequency range. And you can also smoothen this out. Let's turn off the flux. Next to that we get space, which is a reverb-like unit, which was apparently still a little bit on. Here it's a wet-dry controller. You also get this frequency selector, and you get a decay mode, which sets the length of your reverb. Which can go pretty high, and we have pre-delay and stereo, so you can make mono sources stereo as well, or you can make your stereo sources wider. Neat little reverb. Obviously it's missing a gate function, but well, we'll just let it slip, right? Next to that we get magnetic, which is about tape. When you record to tape, you do too much, you get wear or you get a flutter if you have a bad setting on your tape machine. With wear, you will get volume dropouts, which are random. It can be a cool effect. So that's the wear affecting the volume. And if you pull this down, the effect will be less obvious. It can also be in stereo. And you can also set the rate of this for the flutter. So let's move it over to flutter. And dropout will just cut out the entire signal. Flux once again adds randomization. It's a very unpredictable effect, but can definitely be useful if you're looking for a pretty organic sound. Underneath these controls, we get a input gain, pretty self-explanatory, and we get an EQ. First off, we have a filter. We have a soft shelf or a hard shelf with a resonance peak. At the top side, we get a soft or a hard peak. Next to that, we have a tone control, which can either be a tilt mode or a kind of smiley mid mode thing. So if we put it into this mode, if we turn it up, we will get more high and less low. So you can control click to middle D set to the default setting. And this is the smiley mode. So now we get less mid, more high and more low. And that way you get more mid, less high and less low. Width control. Let's actually get a little visual aid for this. So that's mono, regular signal, and we get an output gain. So that's your main settings for this plugin. Of course, you get a selection of presets here. It's very nice. Might have been nice to have a randomize button, although I don't use them too much myself. They can be useful to find settings you might not try for yourself. So that's the entire feature set of RC-20. So how do you use this plugin? What sort of things can you do with it? Well, obviously you can put it on drums like I did now. You can also put it on entire tracks to add a little bit of a final noise to it, for instance. But you can actually also use it for instance, bass distortion or guitar distortion. There's actually a few plugins or a few presets for this. Pretty extreme settings, by the way, but they are very fun. So I will demonstrate those as well in a second, and that's the next step. So let's go. All right, cool. So here we are with a bass guitar. Let me just quickly turn this off. It's a little bit of a weird tuning, but it's a it's a tuning I happen to have for a song I'm trying to learn. So that's just a clean bass signal straight into the interface. Nothing at all on this track aside from Addictive Drum, which is still chilling here. So I'll just turn it off for a second. So let's turn on RC. This is a pretty extreme setting. Of course, you can tape this down a lot if you want to. Although I must admit it sounds best when you just let it rip. And for completeness sake, let's go through a few presets with this drum beat. So in conclusion, what about RC-20? RC-20 is a great coloring plugin, although it does lack a lot of in-depth control. And in many cases I would say this is a serious downside, but at the same time I think this gives RC-20 a very nice sweet spot where you can really use it in a quick way, because you don't have too much to tinker around with. It's easier to just find things that work and move on. So it's kind of a strength in a way, because all the controls do have a pretty wide sweet spot and you can find many sounds with minimal movements, which is a compliment to XLN for making it fairly easy to use this plugin. Now I do think it's interesting to look at alternatives as well, so I definitely am going to pitch this against lo-fi, and I might have one or two other kind of these sort of plugins laying around that I want to show off as well, because there are some things that this does really well. Like I said, the simplicity and pretty wide range of sounds is definitely one of them, and the ease of use as well. But there's also things where I think a little bit more control can be good, although it doesn't have to be. So that's RC-20 by XLN Audio. And if there are any questions, drop them down below. I would like to answer them. And if there's anything you would like to see in a comparison video, let me know as well, and I can see what I can do to make that happen. So that's it for today. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please leave a like, you can subscribe, and definitely follow me on Instagram. That's where I'm most active most of the time. So yeah, that's it. Have a great day.